Hello, it's Matt Linklater here, and I want to share with you some negotiation techniques. The reason that's just top of mind for me is just yesterday I was sitting down with a lawyer, and we were having some breakfast, and we were talking about negotiating some deals, some transactions. We're going to buy some firms, and what the negotiation would look like. And we talked about some of the different strategies, and I talked about the continuum. I talked about perceptual positions. I talked about I call it the circle of comfort, if you will. And then the Harvard study, the Three of Hearts, and just different ways to negotiate and different ways to position yourself, your product. And I think everything in life's a negotiation. I negotiate every day. I negotiate with my 1.5-year-old. I negotiate with my 3.5-year-old. I negotiate with my wife. I negotiate with my employees. I negotiate with clients. Everything's a negotiation, and I approach everything as a negotiation. Matter of fact, people see me going into restaurants and laugh at some of the techniques that I'm using in the restaurant to get the table because I don't like to wait in line. And so I have many stories of how I skip lines and really just use some of these negotiation techniques. But here I just want to share with you a few negotiation techniques that I used over the last few weeks that just come to mind that we started talking about kind of yesterday with the lawyer. The first negotiation technique is kind of one that I derived from a Harvard study. And what the Harvard study says is that it's all about how do you position your products. And so they did a study of selling lawnmowers, and they had a cheap lawnmower. So let's just call it a cheap, low price, low value, middle price, middle value, and then high price, high value. And so ultimately what they did is said, when you present these lawnmowers, does it matter which order you present them in? So for instance, they started presenting the cheapest, the low price, low value lawnmower, and then went to the middle, and then the more expensive one. What they found by doing it in that sequence, the number one seller was the middle price, middle value. But the number two seller was the low price, low value. Now, when they did it the other way, let's present the high value, high priced, middle price, middle value, low price, low value. And what they found by doing it that way, the number one seller was still the middle value, middle price, but the highest seller, the number two seller, was the high value, high priced mower. So when I was putting together a presentation, I also kind of allude this a little bit to the Three of Hearts, and I'll explain that. But recently I was doing a presentation, I was explaining merchant fees to somebody. So I put up a slide, and how I did the slide was this. I had the top of the slide was what they currently were paying in merchant fees. And then I had my three options. Obviously I had the Cadillac, high value, high price. And it really wasn't high value, high price to them. It was just high value and had a little bit more hair on the deal, if you will. There were some more things in there that would be tougher for a client to swallow per se. And then in the middle of the deal was basically us taking over the merchant account and drastically reducing their fees. And then the lowest deal was, okay, nobody's going to move your merchant account. We'll just audit it and decrease your fees. So the big one was a change in business, but made me the most money. The middle one was do it the same way you're doing it, but we'll take it over and we'll save you money. And the last one was keep with your current merchant processing, but we'll just audit it. So the least invasive made me the least amount of money. So what I did is I went from the Cadillac all the way down, and I got called out on this twice. Once by the guy I partner with on merchant processing, and then I got called out on it by the client because she knows my techniques because she's known me for so long. They were joking the whole time I was going through the presentation of kind of what I was doing. But needless to say, they did take the middle priced option, which was still good for us and great. But I put it in such a way that, and presented it in such a way as the Harvard study. Now let me explain another third kind of option. Second option here is the Three of Hearts. So the Three of Hearts really just says, it's an old parlor trick. You can go look it up online. It's a Three of Hearts card trick. And really, you take all these cards and you get somebody to pick the Three of Hearts and you have it in your pocket. And so really, how do you frame up your presentation in such a way that ultimately you frame it in a way where your client picks what you want them to pick. So you give them the options, but they pick ultimately you want them to pick. Now, this takes skill. This changes every every presentation. It's not necessarily the easiest thing to do, but that's also kind of how I tried to do it, as I tried to frame up the different pricing models to get the client to at least pick what I wanted them to pick, which leads into how we actually had to sell this client. So we were on a call with them, and the biggest problem on the call was, again, admit my sales errors, is I always try to solve too many problems because I want all of somebody's business. So we're trying to solve all their problems, and what was getting lost is the one problem that we could solve on the call. So we were solving all these problems, and the big problem we really couldn't solve, or the last problem I should say that took up the most conversation, we couldn't solve on the call, and it negated a sale, if you will. So here's another negotiation option that also played into the 3 of hearts, if you will. So I got off the phone and I called my merchant processing guy and I said, hey, what I need you to do is I need you to type up an email explaining the differences between this client. So now the client was going through 3 different options. They were going through their client relationship manager had a merchant processing, their QuickBooks Online had a merchant processing, and then we had our merchant processing. So I'm not going to go through it on this, but ultimately it's called tiered and flat fee, and then enterprise pricing. Ours is enterprise pricing. Everyone else does tiered and flat fee. So ultimately he wrote up this email, and so as he wrote it up, I repositioned the entire email to be more of the 3 of hearts. So let me tell you the first thing I did. So as he wrote the email, at the bottom, he put, hey, all this mumbo jumbo I just talked about, all this meat and potatoes, is going to save you $3,000 to $4,000 a month, and you're losing that every day you don't get started. So what I did is I took that and put that in the top of the email, right? Small sounds like something small, but I believe that every sentence gets somebody to read the next sentence. So how do you put that hot cognition at the top? So how do you put what's that fear of missing out? What are they losing? They're losing $3,000 to $4,000 a month. They need to see that first, because that's going to get their limbic brain engaged. So right away, that's also another negotiation option, is what's important to them. It's going to be that $3,000 to $4,000 a month that we're going to save this client. So we got to put that early on. So maybe not a negotiation technique, but hugely part of the success in this negotiation. So we put that up front. Then, on the call, we had saw the one gentleman whisper over to the other person and say, hey, I found this other flat fee structure. But they didn't know necessarily the difference. So in the email, I discussed flat fee from company A, flat fee from company B, and then I went through our enterprise pricing model and how the difference between the 3. So kind of that 3 of hearts card trick is, here's 3 things. What are you going to pick? Well, I'm going to put the glaringly obvious one that you're going to pick. And in that email, sometimes I feel that when you write an email and you write it in such a linear fashion and a sellable fashion that I was able to in this example, is sometimes I sell better over email. I'm not going to lie to anybody, because when you're on a phone call, it's so much back and forth. We sell a lot online, and so it's so much back and forth that to provide a linear follow-up really provides that peace of mind for people. And so by providing, again, moving the what's in it for them, that hot cognition to early on in the email, and then framing up the 3 solutions to be the 3 of hearts and get them to pick that 3 of hearts, really helped in that negotiation. So hopefully those 2 strategies work. Here's another couple strategies. The other one is a continuum. So let's say you're going to negotiate somebody, and for me, I'm going to go buy their business, right? On the one end of the continuum, you have them, and on the other end of the continuum, you have me. Now, what I mean by this is that most people think, I want the deal to be 100% this way, and I want the deal to be 100% this way. And most people don't understand, obviously, that the deal is going to come into the middle. But how do you get there? And how do you frame that up is hugely important, because otherwise, it'll be a combative situation rather than bringing everybody together. And I do this in 1 of 2 ways. I call this perceptual positions. And so what perceptual positions will allow you to do in negotiation and sales? It allows you to, 1, understand your point of view. We all understand our own point of view. But if you can put yourself in the other person's shoes and say, okay, what's their point of view? What do they want to get out of this? And then there's a third point of view, and that is the third person observer. So there's you, the salesperson, say the buyer, and then the third person, the innocent observer, and what are they reviewing? So really understanding that technique can help you understand how to frame up the three of hearts. It'll help you understand how to frame up maybe even the Harvard study early on. But really understands where to start on the continuum. But now, let me share with you the comfort zone in the continuum. So on the continuum, if you look at the client, your prospect, your client, right in the middle, the person you're negotiating right in the middle. Now draw a circle around it. That circle is the comfort zone. So obviously they like to stay right in the middle, but in all deals, people have a certain amount of comfort and latitude that they're going to go to, right? And so you have to really understand and construct visually what is that comfort zone. You have to do that for yourself and for the client, because you don't want them to stay 100% on their side of the continuum in the middle of that comfort zone. You want them to go as far out on that continuum to the edge of their comfort zone as that you possibly can. And most people don't do this. I mean, I've closed over 20 real estate transactions in my lifetime. I've had over 13,000 sales meetings and closed over $1 billion in financial products. And one thing I know is that, and I've seen lawyers do this, is that if you don't get everybody on your side right away, you're going to get them stuck right in the middle of that comfort zone rather than to the edge of their comfort zone. So you have to construct their comfort zone for them through conversation. Now we can go through that linguistically, probably in another video, but it might take too long. But let's just explain a little bit. So when you come into any negotiation, instead of just taking the bait, start talking and start pitching, you really have to understand, well, what is it that you ultimately want out of this situation? You know, what do you want out of this situation? What would an ideal deal look like for you? I mean, believe me, when you start asking questions, people will tell you everything. So you say, tell me emotionally, what do you want out of this? If we looked at 3 years from now and look back to today, what would you need to have happen for you to feel 100% successful? You can do 3 years from now, a year from now, whatever it is. But there's many linguistic techniques and questions you could ask to frame up that comfort zone. And so really understanding, what does this deal look like? What do you want to get out of this today? What is your agenda today? And really understanding before you even start talking is, what is that comfort zone? By understanding, what is their agenda? What does success look like? If we have success doing this deal, what does that look like for you 6 months from now? 6 months looking back to today, what does success in this deal look like? 1 year from now looking back today, what does that look like for you? And so ultimately, you're going to start framing up and constructing that comfort zone for the client and for yourself. And so therefore, instead of being 100% where it's a win for them, and I think everything can be a win-win, but instead of it being a win for them where it's right in the middle of their comfort zone, is not necessarily make it a win-win, but how do you push them all the way to the edge of their comfort zone to get the best deal that you possibly can in your negotiation? We can talk about this all the time, and ironically, my wife did the exact same thing in her business, and because of it, she just had a $50,000 month because the way she negotiated, and she pushed them to the outside of their comfort zone. They made her an offer here. She constructed their comfort zone and reconfigured that offer, and it was the difference of her making $50,000 in 1 month. So how do you utilize that negotiation technique to understand what are people's comfort zones? Just because they tell you it's here, you're only on their agenda. But understanding their agenda paints that comfort zone. And so there's a lot of different strategies you can use in negotiation. I can sit here and probably keep rattling off 10, 15, 20 different strategies that I've utilized. But those are some of the ones that came to mind yesterday during this lunch. Those are some of the ones that came to mind for me actually this week that I utilized. So, how to use the Harvard study, how to use the 3 of hearts, how do you position aha cognition in an email and structure an email more efficiently to frame up the Harvard study and the 3 of hearts? How do you use that continuum and understanding the continuum? No matter who you call, there's a negotiation. If you're trying to get past a gatekeeper, there's a negotiation between you and that gatekeeper. Well, use perceptual positions. What do you want? What does he or she want? And then what does that third person observer say about that situation? Once you start identifying that, you can identify comfort zones and start constructing that comfort zone, and you can move the person from the middle of their comfort zone to the edge of their comfort zone and get a deal that's done more strategically for you. So understanding different strategies and approaching different meetings and different presentations with these types of negotiation strategies will help you dramatically increase your success. And we'll share a bunch more for you in the future, but hopefully those are some easy ones. What I want you to do is check us out. Go to linkbizsolutions.com. We're a family office type accounting firm. We help out business owners drastically recoup tens of thousands of dollars every year to their bottom line. We also can help you increase your revenue through different strategies and different measuring techniques. And go to linkbizsolutions.blog. If you're so inclined to, you can check out mattlinklater.com. So there's some great strategies in negotiation. We have a ton of content all over about negotiation, and there's some strategies right there that'll put money in your pocket. I can tell you many different strategies where I've put thousands of dollars in my pocket. I reduced my rent one time by $1,000 through a simple negotiation tactic that I can share with you another time. But other than that, hope you're crushing it out there, and I look forward to chatting with you in a future video.